Shall we begin? Let's begin now.
Hey friends, I am Neethi the pharmacist, here with my co-hosts Janae Williams and Valerie Cruz, and we are on full. Welcome to Our View. Hi everyone. Hey everybody.
Hey everybody.
Hello.
Today, we are happy to have Paul Holton with us. Paul and his wife, Monica, are co-owners and operators of Holton Family Farms in Lewisburg, North Carolina. They purchased an existing working organic farm in the fall of 2017. They purchased one that met their criteria for regenerative family farming lifestyle with major components already in place. And this was in their quest to find a better and cleaner, sustainable food source in the general marketplace for their family. They quickly learned that it was not out there, and they would need to grow it and raise it themselves to meet those requirements. With that in mind, it led them to raising heritage beef, turkey, lamb, and heirloom produce for their own consumption. This is now progressing into a small family farm to grow and share their products with informed consumers looking for the same types of clean food options. So we're happy to have you today.
Thank you. I was glad to be here.
So let's dive right in, Paul.
Okay.
One of the things that I was most excited about in working with you was that you were as passionate about heritage beef as I am.
Yes.
So why heritage?
Well, it's kind of what our forefathers had. I did a lot of research in regards to, everybody knows Angus beef, certified Angus. And what I found in the genetic line of Angus beef and other commercial so-called feedlot cows is they've been hormoned and steroid and antibiotic and genetically really changed or modified, so to speak, to meet a 10 to 15 item criteria in how that beef is supposed to look. The heritage breeds were basically never messed with. They were just left to grow naturally in their own native forage and legumes and this sort of thing. And it was easier to find those types of animals as a breeding stock that had not been given hormones, antibiotics. If there was any kind of antibiotics administered, they were taken out of the beef program. They may still be in as far as breeding stock for later on, but it was not put out for the consumer. So therefore it was a no-brainer. It was basically a healthier choice in raising a so-called smaller cow, but you get more benefits from that cow.
So I think what people also don't understand is that when you're raising these heritage breeds, then the way that they're foraging, the way they fight for their life, like what they're doing out on the pasture, is completely different. And, everyone has been focusing, I should say the centralized food system has been focusing on, bigger is better, when we know the truth is that it's the more nutrient dense is better. And you can't get that nutrient density and you can't get that life-giving force that I speak of all the time out of anything except for a creature that is like fighting for its life. So what are your observations in the way that the heritage breeds fight for their life versus the conventional version?
Yeah, the conventional beef, well, typically there's a misconception about the grass-fed stuff, and pretty much 99.9% of all cows are grass-fed at one point. The biggest difference between the conventional farms and like my grass-fed and finished operation is those cows get weaned at 4, 5, 6 months. Mine are naturally weaned if it takes them 8 or 9 months. Once they're weaned, they go into a feedlot. Very nasty. They're standing in their own manure, which causes a lot of disease and stress in the cattle. therefore they have to administer antibiotics and medicines and everything to keep the cow healthy enough to get it large enough in order to take it to processing. Our grass-fed cows live out in the pasture, and they're still have free reign to forage anywhere they want to. They're a little more docile because they're not being crowded and stressed. And typically I get in the pasture, they follow me around like a puppy, basically. So it's a lot cleaner environment. They're not stressed, which in turns causing, injury or, those sort of things. So
Aggressive behavior.
Aggressive behavior. We had he was about a 1,500 bull that came in off of another farm to breed my stock. And, I have a 3-year-old. He could walk right out there in the pasture with me, and I had no worries about that bull doing anything he wasn't supposed to do.
You're talking about a human child, 3 years.
Yes, human child. And I've been around some of the other types of cattle, whether it's Angus, Brangus, Brahmas, or whatever, and I don't even like going in with the bull if there's open heifers in the pasture that he may want to try and court.
Right.
Yes.
So life and death on the farm. This is very real. This is what a lot of folks are completely, disconnected from. And I think it's interesting, so you said the only difference is the fact that they can, the points that you made. I want to say that it goes back to the soil. Your
Yes.
soil is far more regenerative. It is nutrient dense. It is alive. And I'd like for you to speak on the balance of the ecosystem on your place versus all these other places. Because even the ones that start out on grass, their ecosystem isn't as strong as yours.
No. And typically the ecosystem on a conventional cow, they have pastures, but the pastures are being sprayed with herbicide, pesticide. Sometimes the grass doesn't come up. The farmer will go in and either burn that pasture and retill, and then plant, and it's just overrun. It doesn't really have a chance to recover and put the nitrogen and the organic matter in the proper places that it needs to be in.
Are you familiar with every aspect of the organic matter on your pasture or in the soil, or are you allowing nature to decide that?
I'm allowing nature to decide it, but I am aware of what types of nitrogen levels I have and where the organic matter is being placed.
Sure.
And then the feedlots, when it goes to the feedlot, after that, some of the cows come back from the feedlot, and therefore they're bringing Lord knows what from whatever farm or feedlot or.
Well, they're standing in their own manure. Let's create this picture, okay? So, first of all, your skin is an organ, and it is for the creatures as well. All the bees. So when they're standing in manure that's up to the top of their legs, then they're absorbing whatever is in their bodies, and then that is affecting their hormonal systems. I mean, when people say, this is one of my biggest pet peeves also, when you walk into a store and you see a package of meat and it says hormone free.
Yes.
I don't know what you're talking about, because that was, first of all, a live living creature that had hormones. That statement is absurd. Okay.
Well, I think a lot of that is that they put additional hormones.
Adding
true?
hormones to it, yeah. But I also just think it's an absurd statement. Don't say that about meat. If it was a living creature, unless it came out of chemistry lab, you can't say that. That's
Right.
crazy. So don't say those words. I mean, speak correctly about what it is that you're, talking about. Then they also say things like, gluten free for animals. And I think actually I'd like for you to speak on this, because we are not using any type of feed for the beeves, but, I still, an animal that consumes gluten, that isn't the problem. Let's talk about what is the problem. I mean, people believe that if the animal eats wheat, that results in gluten in the meat, when actually it's a glyphosate issue, isn't it?
Right.
Can you speak on that a little bit?
I guess the main difference would be, well, like you said, there's people hear one little thing from one source, and then they see this commercial advertising and everything, and oh well, that's what we have to have. This is what's good, because big groceries are telling us this is what's good for us. Um, with the grass portion of it, you're only getting grass. They're able to, in the early
Not in the
spring,
corporations.
well, in the corporations, they start off on the grass. Um, then, in order to so-called fatten them up, it can be, and honestly, I have documentation of it. There's some byproducts from other food that actually gets put into those feed troughs for these cows to stand shoulder to shoulder and fight for everything from Skittles,
Mm-hmm.
candy bars, nuts, um, even some waste product from human wastewater treatment plants are actually added into this feed trough. So where in nature would a cow wander up to a convenience store?
Right.
Hey, them Skittles look pretty good. Let's have some of those for dinner tonight.
People always think it's so funny when I say, you're gonna eat that conventional meat. They've been eating Snicker bars and they laugh, but it's real, people.
Yeah. And
what's a Snicker bar, really?
Yeah. And I haven't really divulged into all the chemical analysis of how those certain things would be affecting the meat. I mean, we know it's affecting the meat, but from the biological chemistry standpoint, I haven't really divulged into that too far to find out exactly what the correct terms are on how it's affecting the meat. But I know you would. So, I mean, I wouldn't want to eat it personally.
It's what's happening to us.
Right. It's what's happening to us. Right. So it's going to be different for a cow with 4 stomachs. Okay. Obviously. And so I will just say this. I mean, Paul, I talk about this all the time. You know this also, that, poison is poison and food is food. And I'm sorry, but Skittles can be nothing or anything of that nature, Snickers, whatever you can call it. Like, that isn't what a cow would eat. I don't care where the cow is. Human beings will argue it for us that the Skittles can't hurt us because they're sold for human consumption. But they freak out when it's fed to, the livestock.
Right.
And I really believe that you should freak out if it's being fed to anybody, honestly.
Right.
The chemistry project that you're feeding is creating a hormonal dysfunction on a cellular level. That's really all you need to understand. Is that if, look into cellular biology for anything, and then if you put in the incorrect inputs or unnatural inputs, how does that affect the cell? And that should be your question for your body, for yourself all the time. Currently, Paul, there's this big argument going on about, how we should all be eating plant-based. And I argue that we are eating plant-based when we're eating your beef, because your beef is plant-based, and that is the difference between what we're fighting for versus the corporatocracy that has adulterated the centralized food system with imitation meat or toxic meat from these creatures. Did you hear the part where we just said that the beef is standing in, more than knee deep of their own feces, that they're absorbing that toxin through their skin. So it doesn't even matter if they eat it.
Parasites.
And they're probably eating it because they're licking themselves because they're trying to, just exist, and if they have an itch or whatever, I mean, think about it. Like, be realistic. People, they're so disconnected, Paul, from the reality of the circumstance. Like, if you were standing knee deep in feces, then you're going to accidentally get it in your mouth, whether you want to or not.
Right.
It's inevitable. Not to mention the stress of the smell and the feeling and the whatever. Do you think that because they're cows, they just don't, it doesn't matter?
I don't think people would argue the conditions. That's the whole purpose of this movement with the plant-based. I think what people need to understand is what's an alternative. What can they do besides that? And thankfully, we can bring them that through the show, because we're trying to spotlight that there are people like you.
Right.
You came on board just last year. And this year.
This year, he's one of our new producers because he's just farming newly. and which is what we're promoting. And so tell us, why are you farming now?
Well, like you said in the intro, my wife and I were looking for a better, cleaner food source. And after doing a lot of research, and you look in the grocery store, and there's a very gray area, especially like with beef. Okay, it'll say 100% grass-fed beef, and USDA said they could put it on there. Well, that's fine, and I know the cow probably ate a majority of grass for a while. But what was it finished on? And that was our biggest thing is, I want to know what the finished product is that went into that cow before I consume it. So then that kind of carried over to the chicken and the turkey and produce, and, prices were a little outrageous for what you were getting. And I found some, I'd say, not so great practices as way some of the produce was being grown. So I said, well, I guess we're going to have to raise it and grow it ourselves.
That's amazing to me, because that is the exact point we're trying to make. You asked questions. You found out an answer you weren't happy with.
Right.
So you made a conscious decision for you and your family to make a change.
Yes.
It's probably more extreme than most people would do, because I don't think I would farm.
Right.
But I'm happy that you are farming, and I'm happy that your generosity, not only for your family, has spread to feed others.
Right.
In the same knowledge that you gained for you and your family, you're sharing with others. And I am appreciative that you are sharing that with me, because I can't go through that extreme. I'm happy you are, and you're sharing with me. Well, and that's kind of what we want people to do.
People think you're extreme because you sought out a way to buy his beef, and I think that's incredible. The other part of it is that for Paul, he grew up in farming. So let's be clear about that. Yeah. He has a knowledge base to,
yeah, it wasn't like just getting the book Farming for Dummies
and then take it off. YouTube.
There's a lot of risk and money involved. But yeah, it wasn't that.
Mm-hmm. I think anyone who is brave enough to be a regenerative farmer like yourself has to be knowledgeable. And that's what people don't understand, is that the folks that are coming up through this regenerative movement, and I'm not talking about just farming, generally speaking. I'm not blanketing it. In fact, what they call agriculture at this moment, to me, is a chemistry project, and it is the industrialization of life, which I do not support at all. And by the way, for all of you folks who are saying just become vegan and get over it, I am going to say to you right now, and again and again and again and again, that your plants that you're supposedly consuming, which I know vegans aren't, because I've been to vegan markets where we can't even sell produce there, because all they want to buy is soap and not leather straps for their dogs. Right. And some chemistry project baked some crap. Like, it's not real food. So that's how I feel about the vegan movement. And it isn't a natural human diet, traditional human diet at all. And what's happening is the browning of the earth, Paul, that we keep talking about, is pushing folks into, the corporatocracy is the people in charge. They're trying to get everyone prepared for the lack of food. And the reason that we're going to have the lack of food is because they've killed off the prey predator species. They're killing off, and they want everyone who's eating right now to go vegan so that they'll villainize the livestock that we have left and kill that off as well, which, by the way, all that's going to do is make it impossible for you to actually grow real food. You can't save the soil without regenerative livestock. You can't save the soil without animals. You can't have plants without animals. You can't do it. You can't have it. So,
and what I like about this show is you don't have to take Neethi's word for it. We have an actual farmer who has seen actual browning, actual regenerativeness, and we want
the grace of the land.
Yes.
Can you speak on the grace of the land?
There's only so much that the land can take without having something added back to it to make it regenerative. So when you start spraying chemicals and Roundup and all this other stuff, okay, yeah, it might help the farmer with certain yields, but in the long run, it's not, because it's killing his field. So therefore, the next year, he has to increase the amount of so-called organic matter, mainly it's a chemical synthesized fertilizer that's going back on the field, to try to maintain the yields that he was getting before. Versus a regenerative farming lifestyle, everything that goes out there has its own little ecosystem that is actually helping to heal the land so that everything that's put into the land or on the land to graze can actually benefit from it. So we, well, there's different things between your mob grazing, rotational grazing, that sort of thing. And mob grazing really isn't a definitive, there's like no plan per se. It's kind of one farm can do mob grazing a different way than another farm's doing mob grazing, just depends on what their pastures and everything looks like.
What is mob grazing? Can you define that?
Yeah, mob grazing would, by simple definition, basically is you're sending your livestock, whether it's, you know, beef, lamb, turkey, chickens, whatever, into a controlled area to graze. Because believe it or not, if you turn like cows out in a 30-acre pasture, everybody kind of will graze here and there, but they kind of have their little favorite spots to graze in as well.
Picky eaters.
Picky eaters. So by controlling different paddocks and marking off your pasture, you can concentrate the organic matter in that particular area.
For a variety, right?
Yes, have them graze that area for, you know, day, 2 days, 3 days, depending on what your pasture looks like, and then you move them out. Now, in the spring and summer, when grass is growing real good, you may be moving them every day or sometimes twice a day, so you're not overgrazing that and trampling down what's left after they graze and having that take longer for that to recover before you can rotate them back around to it.
Because let's talk about how the soil doesn't like to be naked.
Yes, erosion, then you're losing some of your matter. You're not getting any of your insects, worms, birds, and everything still contribute to actually healing the soil with flying over and eating certain things that was left in there and the bugs. And so it's basically like your whole, I like to think of it as an ecosystem that you would see maybe in the Amazon. You know, you take one portion away from that, but before long, the trees are dying, the animals are leaving, and there's nothing there for them to live off of.
Balance. You have to have a balance. So the balanced ecosystem. So yes, the pasture needs to be eaten. That's important. You can't just let it stand up because then the new life can't come up.
Right.
And so you have to eat that away, but not to the dirt.
Right.
Right. And so when you're mob grazing, my understanding of it is that 60% of it goes back to nourish the ground and 40% of it nourishes the creature. Is that correct? Something like that.
Pretty close. Like I said, mob grazing, it's I'd say a general practice would be the better term, and it depends on the pasture, the available forage, and everything, and when the particular forage is actually getting to the point of what I like to call harvesting for the cows to harvest. So in the early spring, you may have your orchard and Timothy coming up, and then there's a small window where your legumes would come up, like your clover and your maybe some people put field peas out there or something, but you want to control and really watch that portion of it because it's a very high curve as far as
now this is in a grass state. Let's be clear.
Yes, grass.
So people don't understand that when you say that you're feeding the cows legumes or whatever, they're in a grass state. They're sprouted. It's not the actual what you consider a legume.
Right.
What a human being.
Them peanuts.
Yes.
No peanuts.
No, I mean it's important because there's this confusion. Yeah. Because the consumer thinks that we are feeding them a feed bin, and that isn't the case. Or wheat, grass is not.
It's not the same as your wheat that you make bread out of.
Right. And now when you're feeding the animals a feed, like a proper, that's grain.
Grain, yes.
And this is not grain, this is grass. And so they, like in feeds that you would purchase at a feed mill, that people give the beeves. Now, let's say one more thing. You were talking about the grass finished in the store. Nobody, can you please let everybody know? Because, I mean, I've said it, but, like, I want you to share what you know about it. Because you came up in a commodity dairy farm.
Right.
And so you also know way more than what, I mean, he has a wealth of information, everybody. I don't know if we can even talk about it all right now.
Not enough time.
Right. But I will say this. That I want you to tell everyone that when you're in the store buying what is certified, organic, grass-fed, grass-finished, Is it grass fed in the winter? What are they feeding during off season? How many winters are they carrying them over? And what are you doing versus that?
Yeah, that's the thing that I could not find on any labels whatsoever. You see 100% grass fed or grass fed beef, but I could never find on any label what they were finished on. But typically, most farms will feed hay in the wintertime. Preferably, you'd like to feed the hay off of your own property and or have an arrangement with another farmer that has the same practices that you do, where he's not spraying for weeds or Roundup, or anything to that nature.
Somebody's doing that in a store?
In the store?
Uh-huh.
What do you mean?
I mean, you can find beef like that in a store?
No, not that I've been able to find.
Right.
Grass fed, maybe, so they say, but not grass finished.
But what about the winters? And how old are those beefs?
Typically, on another farm, if they're doing grass fed, they'll be feeding grain in the winter, where we're just feeding hay. We do offer free choice mineral, which is all organic. There's no corn, soy.
You're still talking about somebody coming to a farmer's market or
farmer's
coming
market.
to the farmer. That quality beef that you're describing is only available if you know a farmer.
Right, the grass-fed,
Let's be very clear, because we're talking
Right.
to people across the country, around the world. This
Right.
is internet. Okay, so with that having been said, the centralized food system is not providing that.
Not at that quality anyway.
And even below our standard. The reason you and I are partnered is why?
One, we believe in the same thing or are striving to put that out there for everyone to realize that this is a better way of life, a better way of farming, which in turn puts better food on our tables.
And as a businessman?
It's tough, it's having people realize what effort you're putting into it is actually producing a superior product to what they have been consuming before. But I mean, I think it's well worth effort, and I think the public will eventually, everybody will come around, and then we may be the larger small farms out there versus the big conventional farms.
Right. One of the concerns that we had at one of our recent meetings was, what are we going to do when we get to have so many people?
Right.
And I said, we're just going to recruit more farmers, and you guys need to rise to train them should they be, willing. And I believe, and you can answer and help me, I believe that we have plenty of farms waiting to rise to the occasion.
Yes. But farmers are a hard group of people. They don't really like change. A lot of them will not change unless they actually can go physically visit and see what you're doing. Are you making any money? Is it more difficult than what they were previously doing? Well, not yet.
No, I mean,
right.
If they have, you actually have the potential to make money, and
Right.
you already know that, but you took action to make sure that was going to happen.
Right.
And that's what I would like for you to speak on as well, because that's what people don't know. Like, they don't understand that, because the majority of the producers in this country don't have a market available to them
Right.
to produce in the way that you want to.
That's
it's
true.
very intentional.
Yes. I mean, when have you ever seen it? I think you've said it in one of the things I've read, that you could actually buy beef cheaper than what you can buy produce for. And that's the main thing going around in the commercial beef industry, because everything's been so commercialized and there's so many different steps. It gets a shot at this age, it gets antibiotics at this age, it goes to, so they've taken the profit out of the farmer, and the farmer basically has to have 5, 10, 15,000 head of cattle to maybe make 30 cents a pound on a cow.
What are we talking about as an annual salary for that person?
For that person, probably the average median wage, whatever it is for that particular, they probably spend $40,000 a year.
Right. So do you understand the labor involved in that volume? And you're not even, and these are the creatures that are going to knee-deep species.
Yes.
Or more. Okay. So I want everyone to understand, if you go to a restaurant, or if you go to any centralized place, grocery store or restaurant, that's what you're eating.
Mhm.
I mean, let's be very honest about it. Because no one's saying these things out loud. I want to say all the little words that no one is saying, all those words. You know, why do you want to eat something that had that kind of life? And so then, of course, you're going to want to go vegan or something crazy. The whole problem is that you have no life-giving force in that scenario. And so why are the eaters? I'm confused. Janae, please, maybe you can help speak on it.
Doctors are actually promoting this at this point. They're saying plant-based is the way. There's a lot of research behind plant-based being the way to go. People are getting sick. But if you could see some of the, I'm not saying doctors are sabotaging. I'm just saying that there is sabotage here because, yes, there is browning of the earth. There is a complete, just the nutrients have been removed and replaced with poison. And so you need regenerative farmers that know what they're doing to replenish the earth. Like, why should we even have to do that, right?
Mhm.
But so we've got these animals that are knee deep in manure and, you know, experiencing toxins. And of course, if any one of us was knee deep in manure, even for a couple of hours, we would feel sick, right? But this is long term. And so the meat, yes, the meat is bad. So, you know, part of that sabotage is
that's the point,
we
right?
have unhealthy food.
Right.
But
Well, this
we
is the
know
point.
the problem. I think
Right.
everybody knows the problem. What everybody doesn't know is the solution.
Right.
And we have a solution.
Right.
We had the solution all along, but we went away from it.
Right.
And what we're trying to do is go back to the solution we've had for generations.
Which is to be more intentional, right?
Basically, going back to the breeds that were around for generations, which you have done, going back to the small, leaning on the local small farmers, which what we have done, and
which requires work and relationships.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find out how to get the eaters inspired to want to do this and not look at it like the negative chore. You're going to die if you don't eat real food. Right. And that's what, I mean, I don't know why it's not a priority. Why is it food?
They don't recognize what's going on. The eaters don't realize, well, this is what the show is about, realizing all all of the things that are going into the meat that they're buying. They don't know. And so I think
we're here to talk about,
eyes.
so we're here to reveal the secrets behind the Iron Curtain without all of the explicit videos that I feel like a lot of them are just maybe a little bit over the top. I mean, but these are the real conversations of what's happening. And, you know, and we're not trying to start a fight with anybody. We're not trying to tell people how to run their business. I don't go to corporations and say, hey, you should only be doing this, this, this. I mean, we're trying to just say to you, as the eater, you don't have to participate. You know, you can go find Paul down the street or somebody who's like that. You know, we're here to talk about what you're looking for so you know what to find, what to seek. Because I think that's the other part, right? Like they don't know what they're looking for.
Right.
And the biggest thing I hear too sometimes is, oh, well, you know, one, it costs too much, or two, we don't have the time, or, well, everything's okay in moderation. Well,
is what you're doing cheaper than just paying for it in the store? If you'd have joined my CSA and bought it, wouldn't that have been cheaper than you doing it yourself for your family? Unless you're raising it for 100 families. I'm saying, like, you need to raise it for 100 families to be able to afford to do it. But if you're only going to do it for you, is this what you're doing?
Well, I could, just because
you have a job.
Because I have a job too, you know. But
but is it cheaper than you buying it from me? With your job, isn't it still cheaper for you to buy it through the CSA?
Oh yeah.
But like how much? That's what people don't know. I say if you raise your own chickens and you're feeding them the way that they should be fed and on pasture, which we don't have enough of in my backyard, okay? Yeah. So that means if I want to do it correctly, I either have to bring in grass or fodder or something, right? Which doesn't include all the dirt, which is required, okay? Which doesn't include the balance, which means that I have to now manipulate the balance myself, which again, I keep saying, nature is self-regulating. You know, why is Neethi the dummy going to all these 25 farmers to get food versus just trying to do it in my backyard when I know what I have to do? You know, I could put plastic up around my backyard and create like a fake atmosphere and just pour in a bunch of dirt and try to protect it from all the every 10 other things. And then I could just, you know, raise it there myself, right? I mean, because I could fodder them to death and just keep loading up the fodder until they get whatever they need. You know, Google fodder, people, if you don't know what I'm talking about. But, you know, it's basically wheatgrass trays. I could do like 1 million of them, right? So, but why would I do that when I have someone, you know, as brilliant as Paul who's willing to do the farming? I mean, I'm going to suck at farming. I can't do that. Right. But I can be doing the show and trying to share what he's doing and trying to get more eaters involved, because we don't need to wait for the corporatocracy, and the government's not going to save y'all.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not. So, like, when are we going to rise? When are the eaters going to rise and realize this? That's what this show's about. So we were talking about heritage breeds. And one thing I argue is that you need less meat. You know, when they say eat less meat, I agree. Right. You should eat less meat, because if I get your heritage beef, it's going to have less meat on it. Yep. We're going to have smaller steaks. We're going to have smaller everything. And so everyone's going to eat less meat naturally. But that meat is going to have 25 times more nutrition in it. So why are these other farmers, why can I not get everybody to quit the Angus and join our heritage breed? Why?
I guess it's, you know, this misconception that the Cattlemen's Association has put out there. And, you know, you have the Angus and the so-called certified Angus beef. And this is the way beef is supposed to look, because that's how they genetically engineered it to look, to think that that's what's good for you. It needs X amount of marbling and scoring and all this kind of stuff. I went to a Cattlemen's certified Angus beef thing, and when the carcass goes into the slaughterhouse, or from the slaughterhouse to the butcher, there's I want to say 10 different scoring items they use on that carcass to declare whether it's choice or certified Angus. And all that is just based on a big corporation that went in and said, if you can do this, this, and this with your cow, it's going to produce this amount of meat, this many pounds, and this amount of marbling. As far as the grass-fed, you know, it is what it is. They all look consistent because that's what they're consistently fed. And there's no real scoring model that we have that I know of for any butcher to go through on a grass-fed animal. You know, all they say is the meat looks perfect. Can I have some?
Right.
So Paul, if you butcher 5 beef or 4 of them, there's 4 of us sitting here. I think we can all agree, right? Like, each creature should look different. One of the things that I find that people complain, the only complaint I get for the steaks is that, man, you know, that last steer we had was so good. And can we do that again? And I'm like, nature's not repeatable.
Right.
So every
Right.
experience is different. Every experience is more unique. So it's an adventure, you know, and I'm trying to invite everyone to, you know, take action and participate in this adventure. You know, you want to travel around the world and taste stuff? Why? We could just stand right here, and every time we have a different steer, it's a different adventure. Yep. You know, we can create, why can't that be an adventure? You know, I mean, it's something we look forward to every time. What's this next beef going to be like? Oh my God. I mean, you know, like it's
plus the meat is more nutritionally dense. So if your family of 4 was going to Winn-Dixie and buying a 5-pound package of hamburger, and that was lasting you 2 meals, you could cut that in half to 2 pounds worth of hamburger, and that's going to last you 4 meals.
After 6 months,
After
you
your
have
body,
to be
right.
satiated.
Right.
So if you're eating at whatever centralized grocery store, and then you are getting clean stuff, you should know that if you keep eating from both places all the time, you got one leg in and one leg out, you're never going to know what we're talking about. Not actually. But if you put your whole self in, like the hokey pokey, jump your whole self in, then you're going to all of a sudden become satiated in a completely different way. Right. And everyone who I even talk to and within the CSA, everybody in my CSA is not all the way in. You know, I encourage everyone to jump all the way in and just do the hokey pokey. Because once you start doing the hokey pokey, I mean, you know, magic is happening at that point.
Then you can't go back.
Yeah, then you can't go back out the circle.
Back.
You try it, you're like,
you get mad.
You
get real mad.
I mean, you can't go back. You know, something else funny that people say is, if I can't do what you're doing because then I can't travel and do other things. And I'm like, really? Because I don't know. I mean, I guess that maybe,
right.
But not really. I don't know. I mean, we travel. It isn't the most. We travel for the experience, and we fast.
Well, what I like to, well, we ask questions. We prepare.
Right. We do have to prepare.
We seek out people who are like us. Because there are people like
They're
us.
everywhere.
Exactly.
There's ways
and
to find.
and
This is
you know,
true.
so I think that's a misconception because initially I didn't know, right? If you saw my episode, you know, I just didn't know. But now, now it's a different story. Now I can go anywhere and meet people who are at the same place as I am, and meet actual producers like Paul,
Right.
who I can go and talk to and actually see if I can get nourishing food from anywhere I go.
That's part of your adventure when you travel,
Yes,
right?
and that's
Yeah.
why
That's
I love this show, because we're here telling you you can travel. You
Mhm.
can move. You just have to
Work
be
harder.
intentional
Yes,
and
be
actually seek it out and actually want it and
Mhm.
Be
want it to
proactive.
grow.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he's a trucker. You're all over the place. I mean, you got to be really, really intentional with your nutrition.
Right.
We went, you know, we travel for family occasions or whatever, or
Yeah.
just for fun. And before I go anywhere,
Gotta
I
prepare.
am, you know, researching that location.
Mhm.
I am making phone calls. I am, you know, trying to figure out where we're going to get the food. And maybe I need to pack a cooler in my suitcase and check a bag in. I don't really know.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I've done that before, and I will ship my own meat with me, and then we'll get some produce or something
And
over there.
there's a lot going on in that. We all acknowledge that. Our mission
Right.
is so that we can not have to do that anymore.
Yes.
Right.
That's our mission.
Yes.
Right.
Our mission is that everyone will become you know, a regenerative consumer,
Yes.
so that we won't have to, we as in all of us as a consumer won't have to worry about whether we're traveling. Won't have to worry about
Struggling.
what we're buying and reading labels. So
Because the corporatocracy is lying.
we know it's possible because we're doing it.
And the
Yes.
drive
And
of
we
it.
want you to know it's possible
The
too.
drive is that, believe me, because it's been, goodness, it's almost a couple of years. I don't know. I'm heading into a year and a half of this. It's totally different. Like, it flips the whole model on its head of any need of supplements and any need of medicine.
Right.
I mean, you want to spend money on that? How about taking that money and putting it into your food? Because when you have this nutrient-dense food, it's different. You know by the taste. You know it's different by the way it looks. You may not be used to the way that it looks, but it's good. It's good. And so you get this drive to prepare. And you get mad when you can't have it, or it's, you know, and not necessarily
Janae knows.
seasonally. I know.
Janae knows.
It's not about the season, because sometimes you can't have it because it's not in the right season.
Or you weren't paying attention. And you were like,
But-
no, I don't really need any more. I have some.
No, but you know, you
I'm
get a drive for it, and you want it. So then that makes you think, I need to pack something, or it makes you think, I need to go and do a little research, find out, you know, who's out there, because there are other people. And these days, people are realizing that there's so much sickness. That's what the whole plant-based thing is about right now.
Because
people are getting sick, and they
Yeah.
know they're getting sick. Now, I know that there are some of you that are dreaming, some of my plant-based friends that are dreaming about a steak. And you're so guilty. I've been there. I was plant-based for a pretty good long time, and that's what got me out of it. It was so unsustainable for me and my life and my body. And but you can have it. I don't know. You're hearing what Paul is saying. You can have that. It's healthy, and it's got omega-3s, and it's got all that stuff. You can actually throw those supplements away.
Mm-hmm.
So set yourself free. I'm hoping that this is setting people free today.
Yeah, and especially because, you know, you're talking about the omega-3 supplements and stuff. These are man-made supplements. I don't know what human being decided. Just like I asked Paul over here, like, you know, when you're talking about your pasture, and, you know, or the commodity beef pastures that those beeves are eating off of are humanly supplemented with the three things, you know, that they think. That the powers that be believe, you know, that the people in charge say these three things are the things that make it like perfect, versus what Paul's doing, who he's leaving it up to nature to know that there's probably 10 things we don't even know yet. Like, we haven't even discovered them in science yet. Just like it took us time to Only in the 70s or early 80s, we were finally talking about vitamins and minerals, guys. I mean, antioxidants, nobody was even talking about until the late 80s or early 90s, or I don't remember exactly, but not that long ago. And so do you think, like, I mean, I really believe that there are things that we're going to discover here in a second, and all of a sudden everybody's going to be like, oh my God, did you know that we also need la la la? Or, you could just be like me or Valerie, where we're all like, we don't need the scientific proof or research. We're all like saying, nature's got it all figured out, so we can relax now. We just take it easy because we just make sure whatever it is that we're doing is coming from the soil and from a variety of species and a variety of the grasses and a variety of, we want everything to be out there. I mean, if you walk out onto those farms, sorry.
No. I was just going to say, what I want to see is not only the people to understand where we are for the eaters or consumers, but also the farmers. So what would, in your opinion, you decided to become regenerative recently.
Right.
What advice would you give farmers in that same position who want to do this and be regenerative?
And not be conventional intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as far as, well, first of all, the regenerative farming really isn't anything new. It's basically what our forefathers did and pioneers did to raise their own animals for their own families to eat. And that's kind of where the farmer's market was invented. One or two farms was good at doing the chicken. One or two farms were doing pork and beef or whatever, and they kind of go in and exchange with each other.
Barter.
So it's not anything new. Now, maybe the techniques that we're using today as far as the mob grazing, rotational grazing, monitoring your native grasses and forage and, was probably a little more technical now than it was then.
Because you have to, right?
Because you have to, right. You're managing more hooves on the ground in a more controlled area than just letting them free roam.
Because of the industrialized society. I mean, because of development, right?
Because we're always running short on food is what they said.
Well, we're not running short on food, people. What we're actually doing is...
Good, clean food, yes.
Right. So what's happening is that they're not relying on actual food. They're not relying on actual regenerative practices. This is, what you're getting served up at this moment is man-made industrialized stuff. And if you go vegan, then it's really easier for them because it's really complicated for them to deal with the moods and the swings and the whatever of all of these creatures. So it's just probably better to kill off all the livestock and put you guys on like 5 bags of supplements because that's definitely easier.
Nature's out of control.
Yeah.
When I found what she was asking about, maybe recruiting more farms.
Yes.
Because
I know people will come.
People are,
if you build it, people will come. That's the natural way of things.
They're interested, but I mean, if you've been running a conventional farm, conventional beef, or whatever kind of livestock, if you've been spraying, of course, it could take 5, 6, 7 years or more to get that toxicity out of the soil. So it's not going to be something that happens overnight. Once you do get it established, then you're pretty much good to let it continue to grow. And even after you first started, it may take 2 or 3 seasons of the mob grazing and controlling things, but it can be done.
But with livestock.
But with the livestock, and you're going to have to get away from the conventional breeds. You think of how many things have been done to those breeds over years to meet a certain frame score, body weight, marbling and everything. Okay, yeah, you may could breed an Angus with a Red Devon, which is the type breed that I raised. Heritage breed dates back early 1800s when it was brought to the United States. But how many years of playing with genetics would you feel comfortable with and continually breeding and breeding and breeding till you were positively sure that all the Angus genetically modified things in that cow that it was bred for is actually out of it now? And that's why some people have started to breed heritage with Angus and other cows, thinking, oh, well, okay, yeah, the first season it'll get the grass-fed genetics from the heritage breed cow. Well, sorry, it doesn't work that way.
Tell us about your beefs.
They are...
The story is amazing.
They are a what's called Red Devon. There's 2 types of Devon cattle. You have the milking Devon, and then you have a Red Devon. the farm that I initially purchased mine from, I'll give credit to Charles and Martha Trantham of the North Creek Devons in Canton, North Carolina. They have stories from the farm that those cows are currently on, where the early settlers brought the cows in somewhere up in Maryland, I believe it was, in the early 1800s, and just started off walking. And they walked the cows and walked them and walked them. They ended up going down the Appalachian Trail, and they settled on a nice piece of property in Canton, North Carolina, out in the mountains that backs up to the Pisgah National Forest. That same herd with no outside influence has been on that farm since 1842 on document. They believe it was before then, and the farm was kind of handed down, handed down, handed down. Charles and Martha used to work on that farm, and after the gentleman passed away, he kind of left them as caretakers on this farm, and they've kept the tradition up, and it's actually a historic site where they currently are. So I felt that was probably the number one place for me to find my breeding stock once I chose the Red Devon cattle for my herd.
So, these stories are also as bountiful, as these creatures are. But people need to seek them out and be very intentional about getting it, getting it in the hands of everyone. And so that's what we're trying to do. That's what I'm always.
To be clear, real quick, the transition from conventional farming to regenerative farming is possible.
It's possible.
And
correct.
What do we as consumers have to do to support that, in your opinion?
Stop buying all the crap in the stores where they won't be a demand for the conventional beef.
Hashtag get out of the grocery store.
Get out of the grocery store, go see your local farmer. When can you go to the grocery store and go in there and ask the butcher, hey, where did this package of meat come from?
Is there a butcher in the store anymore?
A couple.
Of them.
A couple.
I don't know the
Not
butchers.
very many, but there's a couple. But, who can you ask where this beef came from? And say if you take a commercial feedlot and they run 100 cows through a processor, well, the ground beef you're getting in that one ground beef package probably has over 2,000-3,000 different cows mixed in with it. When I take my cows to processing, that one cow goes in, it's tagged, I know the tag number and everything, it's slaughtered, it's hung up, and all the meat is identified, and that's where it came from, that one cow. There's no mixing of any other cows in that animal whatsoever.
And we can trace it back from meat. So, like, if you get it, then I know from the label, I can know which farm, which animal, what date of processing. We can track it all the way back. So there is just no question about that. And what's really cool with our stuff is we don't have any recalls.
Right.
When they're doing all these recalls on the news all day, we don't care.
Nope.
Because it has no effect on us at all. And that's because none of our food is coming from the grocery store. It's not from the centralized food system. You guys can either choose a public food system, which is equivalent to public health care, and I think you all know what that means.
Yeah.
Versus, private food system, which is my relationship with you, our relationship with each other, community supported agriculture. And when have I ever kept any of you guys from meeting anybody who produces any of the food?
Haven't.
And have I ever kept you from meeting anybody?
Nope.
I don't hide people. You don't want to work with anybody who's hiding somebody somewhere.
Then they're doing something wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. One of the members said to me one time, you don't mind if we just go to the farm and buy from them directly? And I'm like, no. I told you to go see them. I mean, I think when you guys anybody who's ever joined, I actually encourage everybody to call everyone. It's listed on the website. Call them.
Right.
And what I want people to understand too is the reason I joined the CSA is because it's power in numbers. So when Paul tells us the way we can support the farmers from changing from conventional to regenerative is by demanding the
better
product.
Yeah.
This is how I'm doing it. I'm doing it by joining a CSA that I know is using farmers that I would use if I was doing it by myself, but doing it times 100 or times 1,000. so that when we, as the CSA, go to the farmer, he knows that I am a regenerative consumer. This is what I'm demanding. This is what he is going to give me.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So it's beneficial in our relationship to not just know each other, that I know Paul and he's a farmer, but that Paul knows I am a regenerative consumer. He's giving me a product. He's benefiting. I'm benefiting. And that's how this will organically grow.
So, like, when I first started this, I had to create a collaborative effort, because when I would find a Paul or someone like that, then they were like, well, you know what, Indian woman, we can't just grow this for you. It has to be for more than one somebody.
Right.
And so I had to create, you know, and that's what we want everyone out there to do within your own community, you know, like rise. When are you going to get up and do something? You know, I hear all these moms that want to put together something to do, you know, to help create some value so they can have extra grocery money or something. You know, why don't you collaborate with a couple of other moms and just put together something like what we've done here? Because every city, every town, every neighborhood should have this collaboration, and the farmers need to know that you want it and that you're trying to do that. If you know, reach out to me, I'll tell you what I tried to do and how it had to work. And you need to be ready to work. And it requires a lot of effort, and it requires relationship building, and it requires getting along with people, even when you don't have to like them all the way. Like,
or
nobody.
It doesn't require a lot of effort. I don't even understand why you keep saying that. I mean, really, you want to eat. You want to
Feel better.
Feel good.
Yeah.
You want to be, you know, disease-free, medicine-free. You just seek out what you want, and everything else works itself out.
And us as farmers appreciate having, well, one, the opportunity to share our experiences and what we're growing, and have like an open door policy. You know, this is what we're doing. If you don't believe us, come out and look. You know, now we don't want you just wandering around the farm, because there's certain things you may get hurt on if you're not familiar with electric fences and this sort of thing. But
or donkeys,
yeah, that kill coyotes, and you know. But anyway, we appreciate also having someone like Neethi to help get the word out, because you know, when we're farming, we're farming. We don't really leave the farm very much to do this and that, and don't really have time to market things. And we also enjoy knowing that there are people that appreciate what we're doing and our passion for putting a better product on the table for our families and all the other families, as well as having an informed consumer that can ask the right questions. And then we know they're serious when they come to us. You know, they're not just out trying to hunt for something that they have no idea that they're hunting for.
So I'm going to take a chance and ask a crazy off the cuff question, but suppose, you know, we create all of this demand, because that's what it's about. We're getting what we're getting because we're not demanding anything good.
Right.
So suppose people watch this, they demand it, you know, more people are funneling through a CSA, people are beginning to talk to their farmers. How about folks may actually go to a grocery store and demand some things? Is there a possibility for then grocery stores to begin to reach out to these farmers as well? I know sometimes I remember seeing like and we know some of these labels are not right, but 100% grass fed, and one would say Australia, and the other would say North Carolina, blah, blah, blah farm. And so I challenged it and asked some questions about that. Actually, one said North Carolina farm, and the other said nothing, just 100% grass fed. And so I was like, so is that from the farm too? And they said, no, it's not. It's not from the local farm. It was from Australia. Now, is it possible for there to even be a movement in the grocery stores if there was enough demand? Because I know they do work with local, but only if it makes sense. It's going to be more expensive at times, right? But is there a possibility to penetrate those doors with demand?
I mean, I'd say anything's possible. You know, how long it would take, that's another story. I mean, I have seen some local produce, I think, and some vegetables, a few fruits maybe in a few stores. As far as local meats, it's all been, from what I've seen, just local farms. If you know a farm that actually is producing to the standard that you want to produce at. I don't think it would hit commercial stores because there's way many more conventional farms out there now than us small guys.
Mm.
The quality, I don't think, would ever make it into the store.
No.
I know local farms who have made it into certain centralized programs,
Yep.
and they're all adulterated.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know a single one of them that has ever made it and was unadulterated, which is the reason why I never even talked to anybody who I'm working with about trying to work on getting it that big, because the only way to scale it into that level for distribution in that way is to adulterate it. And
Right.
we are doing everything that we can to scale it in the cleanest way and make it as convenient as possible. And I think the most convenient it's ever going to be. I mean, we actually are launching home delivery, but the big thing about that is that it costs money to do that, and a commitment. If you're not doing the commitment and paying for the delivery for the labor, then it can't work, because the labor can't just be, it's a little bit more laborious because we have to keep it safe on the ride. So we're driving on a route. I can't just put it all in the back of my car and then just drive it over to your place. It can't be like an Amazon box. It just can't. And so the only way it's going to come to your front porch is going to require expensive equipment and somebody who knows how to manage that equipment, and someone who's going to make sure and care enough to put it in a cooler on your porch, and nothing less than a cooler on your porch. And then hopefully with some cold packs, and you also have to make a commitment to be there to receive it or unload that cooler. You can't be on vacation that day or whatever. And all these things require, like some intention. But I don't think, like Valerie says, like she's like me. We're like, this is easy. You guys are making it complicated. I'm not making it complicated. I'm talking to people who are making it complicated because they don't understand why they just can't go to the centralized store and get it. And we got to kind of wrap this up, man. We can talk about this for an eternity. And
Sure we could. But,
I know, right? But we, Paul,
You're awesome.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for choosing
Well,
to
thank
do
you for
this,
having me.
Yes.
because look at this work that you're choosing to do. Everybody's not willing to do it.
Right.
And, God bless you for doing it. And thank you for doing
thank
that
you.
for the
Thank
community.
you.
And thanks for taking the time to come here. Right now is a hard time for you. He's launching the farm, which requires a lot of work. It's not something he is able to launch and provide food for anyone within months, within days. We're talking about years of investment. And he's had to be extremely strategic to do that. I don't think people realize that. And he's still going to have to work an off-farm job for some time to be able to, make it go before you can let go of that.
Yep.
So, it's not easy. He's sacrificing time away from his young children, and we appreciate you so much, not only for doing that, but then taking your Saturday to come.
Oh, no problem.
So,
Anytime.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I hope this episode is serving you guys well, and we hope you'll stay tuned for next week's episode.
See you next time.
Bye.
Hey friends, we hope that this production has served you in some way today. If you would like to hear more shows like this, please help us grow our army of Minas by visiting our website and making a donation today. We are a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. And, I ask that you please like and share this video, follow us on Facebook, become involved with us on Instagram and Twitter, and all of our links can be found in the show notes. Thank you.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and deltaforce.net.